I have applied to hundreds of Upwork jobs, not five, not 10, hundreds. And I got accepted to how many you think? Yes, absolute zero. Yep, a clean, painful, slightly embarrassing zero. But then I changed one thing in my strategy, and suddenly I actually started getting jobs. Not few jobs, not I bought a Lambo from Upwork money. Relax, but real jobs, real money. So I made around $700 so far from this experiment, and honestly, the lesson surprised me. I have been testing Upwork for about half a year now. At the beginning, I thought it would be pretty logical. I have experiments in 3D modeling, I made models, I understand the workflow, and it's one of those skills where I can confidently say, okay, I actually know what I'm doing here. On top of that, I am an electrical engineer. So when I opened Upwork and saw a job post for 3D modeling, CAD work, product design, electrical tasks, technical drawings, and similar stuff, I thought maybe this could be a decent side hustle. Makes sense, right? Well, kind of. My first strategy was probably what most people would do. I applied to jobs that matched my strongest skills. So 3D modeling, CAD work, product modeling, electrical engineering tasks, technical design jobs. On paper, this is the correct move. If you know 3D modeling, you apply to 3D modeling jobs. Simple. Except Upwork doesn't run purely on logic. It runs on reviews, profile history, timing, price, client trust, and maybe a tiny sprinkle of luck, like bad seasoning on a cheap kebab. And I had a problem. I was just one freelancer in a very crowded room. For many jobs, there were already tons of people applying. Some had years of Upwork history, some had dozens of or hundreds of reviews, some were cheaper, some looked faster, some just looked safer to the client. So even if I could do the work, I was just another proposal in the pile, and the pile was big. I kept applying again and again and again, and the end result, absolutely nothing. So after a while, Upwork started to feel like shouting into a giant empty hallway. You search for a job, you read the description, you write a proposal, you try to sound professional, you send it, then silence. And the annoying thing was I wasn't applying to random jobs I had no business touching. I was applying to things I could actually do. That made it worse because in my head I kept thinking, come on, I can do this work. But the first big lesson I learned is that being able to do the work and getting chosen to do the work are two completely different things. Painful lesson, but useful. At one point, I was close to giving up on Upwork, not in dramatic movie scene way, more like why I'm wasting my evenings doing this. And then I started asking different questions. Instead of asking what jobs match my main skills, I asked where do I have an advantage that most freelancers don't. And that changed everything because my biggest advantage on Upwork wasn't actually 3D modeling. It wasn't electrical engineering either. It was location. I live in Lithuania, which is a country in Eastern Europe. At first, I didn't think that mattered. Upwork is global, right? People hire from everywhere. But then I noticed something. There were job posts where being from Lithuania was exactly the point. Not complicated engineering jobs, not fancy 3D modeling jobs, mostly simple local research tasks. Things like checking Lithuanian websites, researching tool companies, testing local platforms, comparing local services, and or collecting information that someone outside the country would struggle to gather properly. And that was the opening. So I changed my approach. I stopped focusing only on big global 3D modeling and engineering jobs. Instead, I started searching for Lithuania specific work. And suddenly things changed. Not overnight, not magically. No, I made $10,000 this week from my bedroom nonsense, but I actually started getting accepted. Most of the jobs were simple local market research tasks, basic research, checking websites, collecting information, testing platforms, looking at local services. Not glamorous. Nobody is going to make an inspirational movie about checking local market data. But here's the important part. I could actually get the jobs, and after months of being ignored, that felt like a win. By the way, I wrote a full breakdown with numbers and details. Read the full article with the link in my bio and subscribe for more experiments like this. So far, I made around $700 in half a year. Let's be honest, that's not a lot. Nobody's retiring on 700 in 6 months unless they plan to live under a bridge and eat discount noodles forever. But compared to where I started, hundreds of proposals and zero accepted jobs, it's real progress. More importantly, I finally found a strategy that works better for me. Instead of trying to win the most crowded category, I found a smaller niche where I had a natural advantage. And honestly, that sounds obvious now. But it didn't feel obvious when I was sending proposal after proposal into the void. The first one is local betting sites research project. It should last around 6 months and pays $40 per month. Again, not huge money, but the work is simple, local, and recurring. And I like recurring small jobs because they are predictable. Small predictable job is still better than a perfect imaginary job. The second one is local crypto market research project. This one should also last around 2 to 3 months. The rate is $12 per hour, capped at 5 hours per week. So the maximum is around $60 per week. Still not life changing, but for simple research work, it's interesting, especially because this came after a period where I generally thought Upwork might just be useless for me. So the biggest lesson is this. The obvious category is not always the best category. I thought 3D modeling would be my strongest route because that's where I have real experience. But on Upwork, experience is only part of the game. If a job has dozens of freelancers applying and many of them already have strong profiles, reviews, and completed projects, then being capable isn't enough. You also need to look like the safest choice. And as a beginner on the platform, that's hard. Local jobs are different. If a client needs someone from Lithuania, then most freelancers are automatically less relevant. Not because they are bad, just because they are not local. That gave me an advantage that had nothing to do with being the best freelancer in the world. I was simply the right person for a specific local task. Sometimes that's enough. I think local jobs work better for a few reasons. First, the competition is smaller. A global a global 3D modeling job might attract a huge number of proposals. A Lithuania-specific research job has much smaller pool of suitable applicants. Second, the work is easier to start with. Most local market research tasks don't require advanced technical skill. They require attention, local understanding, and the ability to follow instructions. Third, the client needs real local context. Some things are just harder to research properly if you don't understand the country, the language, the websites, the habits, or the local market. And fourth, small jobs help build activity on the platform. Even small completed projects matter when you're starting from nothing. A completed job is better than a perfect proposal that never gets answered. So, is Upwork worth it? For me, the honest answer is still testing. If I only looked at the first part of the experiment, I'd say Upwork was a complete waste of time. Hundreds of applications, zero jobs, lots of frustration. Not exactly expiring. But after changing the strategy, it started to look more useful. I would still call Upwork. I still wouldn't call Upwork easy money. You need to search carefully, apply to the right jobs, communicate clearly, and actually do the work properly. But I no longer think that it's impossible. I just think the strategy matters way more than I expected. For me, broad categories didn't work. Local niche jobs worked much better. If you live in a smaller country, I think this is worth checking. Instead of only applying to global jobs in your main skill area, search for jobs that mention your country, city, language, or local market. For example, local market research, website testing in your country, app testing in your country, local competitor research, price checking on local websites, collecting local business information, reviewing local platforms, and country-specific research tasks. These jobs might not sound impressive, but sometimes a boring job you can actually get is better than an impressive job where your proposal disappears under 50 others. That's the part I had to learn the slow way. So currently, my verdict on Upwork is keep testing. It's not a major income stream yet. My first strategy failed completely. It took months to find something that worked, but now that I've started getting accepted for local jobs, I think the experiment is worth continuing. The main lesson is simple. Don't compete where your skill fits. Compete where you have an unfair advantage. For me, that advantage wasn't just 3D modeling. It wasn't just electrical engineering. It was being local. And Upwork, and on Upwork that finally made a difference. Read the full article on the link in my bio and subscribe for real side hustle experiments. Not financial advice, just my personal experience testing Upwork. Thank you for watching.